Hi, and welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show, the show for animal training and behaviour nerds, where I, Ryan Cartledge, interview the world's most proficient animal training and behaviour geeks. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever you're listening to this on so that you don't miss a single episode. Each episode of this show is brought to you on behalf of the ATA membership. And if you like the conversations in this episode, then you're invited to continue them with like-minded behaviour nerds within the membership area, which you can find out more about at www.animaltrainingacademy.com. You'll get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalogue of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help problem solve your training challenges. Plus, we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forum areas. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behaviour geeks. Well, we will get started on today's episode where we will be talking to one Melissa Millett. Melissa is the founder and head trainer of In Dogs We Trust, the Ultimutts, and Ontario Animal Actors. As an animal expert, Melissa has been featured internationally and on programs on every major Canadian TV network, including Breakfast Television, Global News, CTV, Animal Planet, The Pet Network, and more. Melissa was the host of the Canadian television show Doggy House Calls and the spin-off series Doggy Diaries in cities across Canada. And Melissa is known internationally as an advanced trick trainer and performer with Ultimutts. Through Ontario Animal Actors, Melissa provides an elite service for animals in film and TV. Most notably, the team co-trained the cats for Stephen King's 2019 Pet Sematary. Crypto, the super dog on Titans, worked on a 2019 Super Bowl commercial and commercials for PetSmart, Tim Hortons, Duracell, Ford, Yoplait, and Gund. Past clients have included Paramount, Netflix, Warner Brothers, and more. So without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to welcome Melissa Millett to the show today, who's patiently waiting by in Ontario, and not in Ontario, in Quebec, Canada.
In Ontario, Canada.
In Ontario,
near
Canada?
Toronto.
Oh, yeah, London. I've been speaking to a few Canadians recently and getting my wires crossed, obviously. Hey, Melissa, thanks so much for taking the time to come and hang out with us at Animal Training Academy.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
And I hate that people can't see the video feeds from our Zoom recordings because your house is a shop? Is what you call a shop?
Yeah, we call it a shop. It's like a big barn or garage that's heated and insulated because, in Canada we get cold. But I actually, it's separate from my house. I just live in the shop practically. The house is just for sleeping. But it's bright and colorful and turfed and full of fun equipment and couches, and we have it all.
Yeah, because you're sitting in your training. Would you call it your training room?
I would call it the training room or the training barn. It's maybe 40 feet by 40 feet. And what's I think the best part about the training barn is that since I do like tricks, I really love sports, but my passion is tricks. And so it's full of custom props. I actually made these props with people who do metal shaping and build classic cars. So we were friends, we got together, and we built a bunch of custom props. So it's a great way to encourage other trainers to come over and share knowledge because I have equipment that they can try that they couldn't try anywhere else.
Yeah, and plus you have a space. I mean, I'm looking at my space now behind me. It's a tiny little office where everyone sees my ugly rug that my friend gave me. So that's something that a lot of people, if they could see, I think would have some envy over. And you've got to explain to everyone about, because people see this space in videos and social media stuff you share, I'm assuming. I feel like I knew the space before we connected.
Oh yeah, it's all over my Instagram. So like we have our Instagram, it's like _Ultimutts, and I share a lot of the tricks and that from the fun space there. But yeah, in that space, I actually have all sorts of interesting things from commercials. So I collect pieces from commercials, and I have a big fake grass dog sign. And
That's
it's,
so cool.
What is it? Is it 4 feet high by 4 feet wide each
It's
letter? I had to
huge.
rent a truck to bring it home, and we had to. Yeah, we posted it up on the wall. It's a big eyepiece.
So no one can be confused about what happens in this space.
Isn't it ironic though? Because I think I'm really gaining the most notoriety for cats, and yet all the love clearly here with the big dog sign is going to the dogs. But no, I like to actually. I'm all about memories as well, and I like to keep little pieces from our commercials. So we did a US Super Bowl commercial, which is a huge honor. And in the commercial, the humans were the pets and the dogs were overlooking them like they'd trained them. And the humans were showcasing their tricks. And one of the tricks that the human did was to shake. So they had a stand with a mannequin arm, and the human shook the mannequin arm. And I said, I'm taking that human training prop to my facility. Now I just have this stand with a mannequin arm, and everybody is like, what is that?
That's a great prop to encourage the sharing of that story, which is awesome. And I kind of feel like it's true anyway that we're owned by our dogs and they're training us all the time.
Maybe not as much as cats own us.
So cats, has the notoriety that you mentioned with regards to being the cat training lady, has that come across after your work in Pet Sematary? How did that happen, do you think?
I think that happened originally with my Bengal cat. I was looking to bring something different to the show, and I decided to get a Bengal cat and just see how it went. I was told I was crazy by all my friends, like, why are you doing that? Trained dogs are enough. They're really fun to see. And once I started training her, she started getting me the most attention. And that's what brought the opportunity in film and why I got the call. And I think so my career has ended on, they come for the cats and I can get them to stay for the dogs, which is a piece that I love as well. But yeah, it was definitely all thanks to my Bengal cat, which she's they are a lot of energy. They're highly intelligent. So I'm like, you're worth all the work, No, she's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever actually met a Bengal cat. And potentially there are people listening to the show who might not even know what a Bengal cat is. Can you explain and share what it's like to live your life with a Bengal?
Yeah, they're considered a hybrid cat. So they were cats, they say, that were bred with a mini Asian leopard. So they're considered a hybrid cat where they're part domestic and part mini wild leopard. And I would say she's very, very busy and active compared to my other cats. I mean, she loves to work, but she is very, very busy. And we do a lot of animal training here in the shop for film. That's what we use the facility for. And my trainer comes over, and I remember she watched my Bengal cat running with us through the day, hanging out with the dogs. And she's like, wow, that's a lot of cat. She was constantly asking to work, knocking things over, busy, busy, busy. She's not a cat that you're going to see taking cat naps all day. So that's what really attracts me to the breed, is the high level of intelligence. I've heard some people say that they've met nice ones and ones that are not so nice. My specific cat sleeps on my lap all day. When she's awake, she asks, not all day, but when I'm working, she'll sleep. When she's awake, she's asking to work nonstop. And at night, she has to sleep spooning me. So she's incredibly friendly as well. She's all around. She's a cool cat. I could hike with her. When we do shows, I could stop and hike, and I know she'll go half an hour with the dogs at pace.
Yeah, and I imagine that for that breed, are they a breed of domestic cat, or are they kind of separated out into their own hybrid species? Or
that's a good question. I think they might be considered a domestic cat.
And I imagine for that breed of domestic cat with that genetic tendency to be so busy, finding yourself in a captive or a domestic setting without the adequate attention and needs being met would potentially lead to people labeling them as not nice Bengals.
That's a good point about where it would come about. And she originally was somebody's pet, and she was too much cat for her, probably.
Right.
That's how I ended up with her.
Cool.
But I've done a lot of cool things with this cat and her energy. She's a whole lot of fun.
How old was she when you got her?
10 months.
All right. So she said the owners had figured out pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you knew this, but we traveled to America's Got Talent with her. And we did that to April of 2020 or 2021. No, April of 2021. And it was a really long flight. It was to California. And she would on our layovers, like on the way, I did all sorts of prep training, putting her in the crate, sitting in a seat in front of me. And so she rode under my seat on the way. And in between, every moment I could, I took her out, put her on a leash, and she waltzed through the airport tail high through security. I remember we would stop and I was doing little shows for people, and she had the stamina to go all day. And when we got to AGT to practice, we were in a hotel in quarantine for 7 days, and first time she got in a wide open space, she ran off on me. And I literally think she just wanted to stretch her legs, because she runs laps around my shop and she runs laps around my backyard. So, but no, she had an amazing time, and it was wild. Of course, when she ran off on me for a second, I had a heart attack, and then, then I caught her, I let her acclimate some more, and she worked beautifully.
I'm intrigued to learn more and potentially do a whole episode on Bengals. But well, at this point in time, I want to ask if you might take us all back and share with the listeners of this show your story. Where did you first learn about positive reinforcement animal training, and how did you get started?
Oh, that's a good question. And I want to start with this quote that I saw on a page the other day. The fastest way, or slow is the fastest way to get to where you're going. And I think, yeah, that's definitely has been my journey. I started 20 years ago using old style training. I had a Rottweiler. We were told that that's what you had to do. So we used the prong collars, and she turned out to be a good dog. And I, as I got started a few years in, I didn't want to train that way. So I didn't have any positive reinforcement schools to go in my area or money to do. I was young, and I read every book that I could, every single book that I could get my hands on. Did a lot of YouTube videos, and I started getting into positive reinforcement in that way and crossing over, which was also real slow with the prong to the martingale. And I think it's always important to remember that change is slow for humans as well. But anyway, it took a year or two to make that distinction, and I changed over to positive reinforcement. I apprenticed with a trainer, and then I started teaching dog training and opened a school. When I got the new dogs at that point, I had such an amazing relationship with them. I think a lot of us know with correction training, it's easy to shut the dog down so that they can be more subdued as a family pet. But the opportunity of the dog having the confidence to offer behaviors with positive reinforcement was amazing, especially for somebody who really loves tricks. So I started the dog training school, and I started teaching tricks. I was a single mom. I taught the dogs tricks every night obsessively. 5 hours of training at class, no problem. I'm going to do another 3 at home. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And then in order to share all these complex tricks that I had taught, I asked a local festival to trade my dog training tricks to make a show for a booth. And on the very first day that I had the booth, I got an agent. And I don't know that we were very good at presenting. Okay, I was looking at my feet. I was nervous, but the tricks were good. And we got an agent, and that actually became the second career. I mean, who gets to do that for a living? It's amazing opportunity. And then from there, I ended up doing that for a career. I really took off, loved it. And somebody reached out to me, an animal coordinator, because of my cat. And he was looking to cast a couple different projects, one of which, our biggest one together, started out to be Pet Sematary. But I was sort of discovered into film from the live show. So I always say, it just came from wanting to do the best job. I wanted to have the best trained personal pet. Then I became a dog trainer. I wanted to become a better dog trainer and teach tricks because I loved it. And I had a show. And I wanted to have a really great show. So I tried training a cat, and I ended up in film. Everything was by accident.
So where to from here then? And that, I feel like, I get the sense you're saying that it was all serendipitous and it all kind of just naturally, organically happened with very little planning or thought. Just, well, as Susan Friedman would say to me, standing at the riverbank and watching the things flow by and then grabbing the things that grab your attention.
I like that. That's a good metaphor. That's exactly, it was all by accident. So
that first dog you had, you said was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, what you've managed to achieve in 20 years, how long ago did you start Ultimutts, would you say?
That was 10 years ago.
Okay.
And it's, honestly, it's amazing how long it takes to build a show. I think that's the longest thing,
How long does
because
it take?
we have to, years, and that's what I love about it, because I am such a patient person. Aren't we as animal trainers patient? Do you find yourself to have a higher level of patience than most people, or just love animal training that the patience is something that came to you? How do you feel about patience?
My
Do you
wife
have a
says I'm
lot?
very patient.
Okay.
I think it's taught me that, as you've said, and something that resonated with me is that as humans we learn slowly as well, and I think that is a skill that you have to learn. You have to learn how to learn, and that requires patience.
Yeah. I think for the show, I don't mind a slow build to eventually get somewhere. I love having that mountain to reach for while focusing on the next step. And so when I got started the show, I had 2 incredible dogs, and I got Pickles early on. And I just came up with an idea that I would do a basketball slam dunk as a main concept. And then from then I would have halftime show and prizes and an intro and all of that. But I started thinking of, then you start coming up with these amazing ideas from your original. So from the original basketball slam dunk, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a dog and I'm going to teach him to bounce pass, which sort of looks like dribbling a basketball, or catch a ball in his paws. But I didn't have the dogs for it. So then I would wait for the right time, find the right dog. He would have to mature. Then I would teach him the tricks. So the thought would start, and 3 years later, I would finally have that, right? So the slow build for everything was really slow, but amazing. Like I just changed my concept from the sporty basketball slam dunk theme to Hollywood. So now I'm like, okay, let's merge it all together. And so now I've got 2 years ago, I came up with the Hollywood theme. So it's been 2 years for me to actually really come out with these skits. I have a dog that this is what I'm really excited about: impersonations. Okay. And think of how big this could go over time. So he's a dog that's going to impersonate other animals. So I did the Sylvia Trickman penguin trick. I'm going to have him impersonate kids, doing the cover with his homework. He's going to jump on my back. That's going to be the goat, and just think about all the silly, funny things that are going to just eventually occur. You'll be watching TV and you'll be like, yes. So in 3 years, that routine is going to be even crazier, but it's such a slow build. But so when I showcase my show, I look back and I think, wow, this really was 20 years in the making. It was years to learn how to train animals, and it was years to acquire the dogs and come up with the ideas. And I love that, because I feel like I'm an artist and that's my art.
Well, it sounds magical, and I think to those listening, it sounds like it's been 20 years of continual fun and success. But owning a business, I know that there's highs and lows. Has it been all easy for you, or have there been times where you've been like, oh, I don't know if this is going to continue, or I don't know if this is going to be able to sustain us, look after your daughter and run the business and all of that, or is it just gone from strength to strength?
No, there's definitely been a lot of lows. I remember when I was running my dog training business, and it was pretty successul. I had a TV show at the same time, and I started trying to get this live show to go. And it takes a lot of money to get the live show going. And I didn't have like spare money to buy these expensive props and vehicles and gates and backdrops. So I was working really hard, trying to train all these dogs. I enjoy the training the most. So I have currently 8 dogs and 3 cats. But at the time I had, 3 or 4 dogs and a cat. So I'm trying to train all the animals and spend all the money. And I remember I was at my breaking point. My daughter was young, and I would drop her off at school, and I was crying. And then I would go and I would work really hard, and then I would give her time, and then she would go to sleep, and I'd stay up really, really late and work. And then I'd go to sleep, and I was crying after I dropped her off because I was exhausted. I was done. But I wanted the show to go, and I loved it so much. I knew that it was just the thing that I wanted the most. So I started watching motivational videos, and I remember I I saw, which is funny because there's all this controversy surrounding Will Smith, but I saw Will Smith. He does a lot of motivational videos, and I love the way that he presents his information. You know, whether or not he made a human mistake is a whole other podcast. But he said in his book, he said, I want everybody to go out and get the book, The Alchemist. So it just stuck in my head, and I went to Chapters the next day or a couple of days later, and I saw the book, The Alchemist, by accident. I wasn't even thinking about that, right at the front of the store. And I bought it. And the book was about actually following the signs to your destiny without giving up, even when it's hard. And so I thought, wow, that's amazing, because Will Smith talking was a sign, and finding the book was a sign. And the book is about signs, following your destiny. I'm going to grind, and I'm going to keep working, and I'm not going to think I'm crazy anymore. And I'm going to keep going. So, you know, I tell myself now, because I'm in film, one day I'm going to work with Will Smith. I got that book of The Alchemist, and I'm going to ask him to sign it. And that is going to be my full circle story. And I'm going to put that book up on the wall, and I'm going to say, hey, Will, I want you to know about an interesting story about how your motivational video led me to the sign. I don't think I would have given up, but I really enjoyed that push, you know? That was a really neat story. We actually, I don't know, did you ever hear about our car accident? Oh, well, we had a major speed bump. So you remember I'm telling you about this grind, right? And about how hard it is. And so 2 years after that, I get to a point where I drove to the Toronto Redpath Waterfront Festival. I've got the equipment, the backdrop. I'm starting to look good. It doesn't look like a garage sale anymore. You know, it looks professional. I show up. They're having me do media. And the news outlets are there, and I'm going, oh, hey. And they're going, oh, hey, Melissa, I know them. I felt so good. You know, I'm not an ego, but I felt, yeah, you know, I'm really there. And we finished out that show. It was amazing. We were driving home from that show, and a young 20-something-year-old man was weaving in and out of traffic, driving people off the road. The speed limit is 100 kilometers per hour. He was going 140 to 150, and he smashed into us. And we rolled, and all the dogs were released from their crates and running on the highway. And one of them died, and one of them ran scared for 9 hours with everybody chasing after her. And they ended up catching her, and we had 4 out of 5 dogs. The cat wasn't with us that day. But that was a massive, you know, bump in the road. It was a crazy experience to experience something like that, that you know, your passion, your dogs, your child, everything was on the road. It was quite something.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry that you lost one of your dogs. I bet. How long ago was that?
That was 6 years ago.
And I'm sure there's still echoes of trauma from going through something like that. How does it feel to talk about it now?
Oh, I think you could still feel emotion when you talk about something like that, even though, you know, I try to suppress it so you don't hear it in my voice. But I definitely feel, you know, my heart beating faster. It's probably your worst nightmare, you know, as a parent, as a dog lover. You know, I woke up in the hospital thinking everything was gone. You know, what came out of that crash other than me? You know, it was wild. But it's a great inspirational story for overcoming, because we ended up, obviously, you know, he actually went to jail, and you go through insurance and you know, to recoup your losses. And in my case, I was driving a van when it happened. And when I was on the stand, it was, instead of a van, I drive a motorhome. So instead of a van and trailer, I now drive a vehicle that's 52 feet long. And, you know, I live in a nicer house that I own, and I had a bigger career. So they called me an extraordinary high functioning individual, where instead of, you know, they sent private investigators after to take photos that I had 50-pound dogs balancing on my back, whereas I didn't think that I would ever be able to lift and carry things after. So, you know, we look at it like a really cool, inspirational story now.
Well, thank you for getting vulnerable and sharing that story with us on this podcast episode. Also, sorry to hear that you went through those challenging times where you said you're dropping your daughter off at school and crying and then doing the hard slog. I've been there as well. I haven't been operating for 20 years, but I've reached that point as well. So, but you found Will Smith, and you and then you found The Alchemist. I wasn't expecting you to say Will Smith then, but I know I know the videos and some of the stories that he shares. So was that a prompt for you to just keep on slugging hard, or was that a prompt for you to say, I need to find new ways of doing things that don't make me feel like this, but achieve my goals? Or how did you navigate out of that to where you are now? Saying that with an assumption that you're a superhuman now and you don't have any days like that. Of course you do still, I get it. but like what else did you learn from that experience?
No, I like how you're taking that full circle, because I think it's great to be human and talk about these challenges. And I think after I pushed through on the show, and even with that negative experience on the highway, I don't have to grind that hard anymore, because now I've got one set of equipment in my trailer, whereas back in those days, I used to have to pull it out to practice and put it away. I have a set of equipment in my trailer, set of my equipment in the shop. I can just jump in the car and drive for the most part. And I mean, imagine having this career where you show up with your dogs that you love and you share them with people. You share this thing that you love, and you show off your tricks and you show off your dogs. And the whole day, I mean, everybody that has a dog, how everybody smiles and lights up when you have a dog. Imagine when you show up with a dog show that's there for everybody. It's just smiles. It's everybody telling you how cute your dogs are. You just spend the whole day with that amazing energy. My motor home and trailer is wrapped with dogs completely. It looks like a massive billboard going down the street. And so the energy from start to finish, I actually have young girls that work in my show. It was the young girl that she started with me when she was 12. And she's 18. She might move away or she might still work with me. But we've been a long road. When you work with young people, their energy is high. They're excited. Everything is fresh and new. So all around, we have a really positive work environment, where there's never any yelling. There's never any wrong. The humans are treated like the dogs. And we stop at the road and everybody's, where are you going? What's going on today? Are the dogs in there? That's the payoff from some years of a grind. And I would trade that over 1,000,000 times in a heartbeat. I mean, just yesterday, I took the motorhome to the park so that I could practice with the dogs and give the other dogs a place to hang out in air conditioning. I just spent the whole day smiling and waving to everybody. I would do it 1,000,000 times over for that energy. It was 100% worth it.
And I'm wondering if there's people listening to this who are like, how do I, people are starting their dog businesses and they're getting calls about reactive dogs on leashes, and they're worried they don't have the skills, but then they're upskilling themselves in that area and they're taking on aggression cases. And they're like, man, I would like to do a business doing trick training. So you said that when you started your dog training business, that is the original direction you took with clients?
Yeah, that was all I was ever thinking that I would do, is just family pet training. That was the plan. That was the goal.
And working on things like reactivity and aggression, or were you somehow incorporating trick training for your clients into that at that point?
Very little trick training. It was all family pet and reactivity and aggression. Yeah, trick training is just what I did myself.
Right. And how random was it that there was an agent at your first ever show? Do you think that if someone else goes and does a show, there's potentially going to be an agent in the audience, or was it just a random agent just happened to be there with his family who saw you?
That has only happened to me a couple times since in the 10 years that I know of, that I've ever been approached by. So I would think that it has got to be pretty random. And if the agent wasn't there, I don't know that it would have occurred to me to be something to go after.
Yeah.
And I think it also takes, I think doing anything takes a lot of grit, because you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes. You're not always going to look your best, right? And I always say you have to have a really good sense of humor, because there were some learning mistakes that were made in front of crowds.
Like what?
And like what? Oh, I got to give you a funny story. Now, most of the time I had two solid dogs. The two most solid dogs I've ever had were those two dogs. So I think I got lucky with those two dogs. But I did a show at an Asian mall, and it was just different. It smelled different, because there was a lot of authentic foods, and they didn't want us to be seen. They wanted the dogs to be a surprise. So they had some great tricks. We were going to be the finale. So they put us in a tiny waiting area. And, I think a lot of people that train animals know that you have to acclimate them and let them look around. And I always did that. But I thought that these dogs were good enough that they could just come out swinging. Well, they're not border collies. The only dog that I have that can come out swinging is my border collie, my Boston Terrier Pickles. But I mean, I think usually these dogs could have. I did a lot of TV shows. Anyway, it was up on a stage as well. So that was different. For whatever case, they came out and they were really taken aback by the different smells, the stage, the fact that they didn't acclimate, the fact that they sat there for so long in this room going, what the heck? That when they came out, they were just looking around confused. And for the first time ever, I mean, we've had a lot of great success. I have to reiterate that because we bombed so hard. They were not doing what they were supposed to be doing. And I started panicking and I was, now we're going to jump rope. Now we're going to ride a skateboard. And there was a magician's girlfriend that was sitting in the front row. And she was like, I can't wait to see the dogs. And based on their performance history, I was like, yeah, they're going to be great. So she stood in the front row. And every time we bombed, she cupped a fist in front of her mouth and cringed. And I was seeing her cringing. And it was not helping me. It just made me panic deeper. But when all was said and done, that was the only time I ever really bombed that hard. And I still gave them a ride home because I didn't have a car because they lived in Toronto and everybody takes transit. So I faced them. I didn't just cower away and disappear. I said, did you guys want to ride home? We didn't talk about how the show went, though. So those happened to all of us. And I think you gotta push through. I think the only thing with working with animals is that when it comes to reactivity, you don't want to make those mistakes because people are relying on it. So I always had a rule. It's so important for them to get that help that I always had a rule that I would say, I don't know. So I think you're out of my league. Let me refer you to somebody, or let me give you a discount on today. Can we focus on, is there anything else we can focus on instead that I do have answers for? And let me redirect you to somebody who can help you in that area. But yes, when it comes to trick, you can fail miserably and giggle about it years later.
And does that experience and similar experiences and being on a stage or doing one of your shows where inevitably things happen, distractions that our animals aren't used to occur, or they're just not motivated on a particular day for whatever reason, or something else happens, has that helped you as a trainer become better and become better suited to dealing with when things don't go right in certain training situations? And with that thought and your experience as a presenter, what do you have to share with our audience with regards to how you incorporate that into your training and dealing with mistakes and failures?
I think I look at failures as a lesson. I'm very much a perfectionist and I want everything to be perfect. But every time we do a show, every time we go on stage for a film, we look at each other and we say, where could we have done this better? What could we have done that was to prevent this from happening? What did we learn from this? And in that particular case, I learned that, I'm sorry, you can't just tuck the animals away. They need to go out and see for a second and acclimate, whether that be earlier before the mall opens or whatever the case. But I learned a good lesson from that way. So I think it's always, what is the takeaway? Because wasn't it Susan Friedman and Ken that didn't they have a discussion about how it's okay to make mistakes? I remember sending that to my business partner because he's just as hard on himself as anybody about just looking at that as learning lessons. Have you ever had like a massive bomb because didn't you do live animal shows?
Yeah.
Did you ever bomb massively?
And I think the first time I went to watch someone else's show and they bombed, I think I remember they couldn't bring their eagle out because the chickens didn't go away or something. I was like, oh my God, it's not just me. And then I started to really relish those opportunities because I think they are opportunities, and they're opportunities to communicate to this audience, which, as you said, are so receptive to information because they're in such a good mood and there's animals around and they're so excited about how behavior works and about how positive reinforcement works and about how they're not robots. And I just used it as opportunities, and I kind of started to enjoy when things didn't go as planned. I'd never been in a situation in a mall where I've just randomly brought animals out in a food court, so I can't say I relate to that one. We had pretty standard areas to work in, but yeah, I enjoy that, and I find it interesting that you say that you label yourself as a perfectionist, because I feel that would clash a little bit with learning from mistakes. So it's interesting to hear you think about yourself in those two ways, which for me seem quite contradictory.
I think, well, we can only accept an 80% success rate in animals or most humans, like in any situation, even in a live show, right? But I can tell you, like my cat Sashimi, like my cat Tonic, he comes out and you know he's going to nail it. But my cat Sashimi, I don't know, she just picks one single trick and is like, I don't remember that one today. Every time we don't know what it's going to be. We tried to find, I think the sequence is she also thinks what trick is going to be last she doesn't want to do because she doesn't want the chicken to stop. But one of the things that I took away with it is I've got really good at one-liners to make fun of myself and the animal. If they stiffed it, I would just say, well, I guess you're just going to have to imagine that one. Or, the cat's going to be a cat. Like usually if you do a foot stall and your feet are in the air and the cat jumps on your feet to balance, they like to pick that one to just rub up against you and suddenly forget. And that's a great one to stand up from. And you just make a joke as you go. And I find I actually get the compliment a lot that people say, I love how you just make a joke about it when things don't go right, because they don't. I bring it to attention instead of brush it under the table. And it works, because most of the time they do it right. But as you say, 80% success rate is about what I get at shows most of the time.
So do you have some good cat jokes up your sleeves then?
Do I have some good? I was just thinking that because I was at the park yesterday and I was working my cats so in Canada, yesterday was the first warm day. So everybody came out and I brought my cats to the park and 2 out of 3 cats were really good. But a couple young girls came to sit with me and I was just cracking jokes and they were laughing when the one kitten was stiffing me. And I'm just thinking, I was like, what were those jokes? I should have written that down. That could have been solid material for the show.
We'll have to get you some cat jokes.
Please.
I had a bag full of bird jokes that I used to tell.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Can you share one with us?
I can share a really bad one. The first one that comes to my mind is, when ducks are flying in formation and one side's slightly longer than the other side. Do you know why that is?
Yeah, why?
Because one side's got more ducks on it than the other side. That's a joke I always used to tell.
I'm not okay.
The rest of them are failing to come to my mind, and some of them are quite rude. So I don't want to necessarily say them on this podcast show because I worry that I might offend someone.
Okay, that's fair.
But younger me used to think it was totally fine to say to the visitors of our wildlife parks where I used to work. So you had a job on a TV show called Doggy House Calls?
Yes.
What was that about?
Well, first I got to backtrack and I got to say, I also did an event where it was Canine Olympas and it was a bunch of challenges for the average pet owner. Where, the games where the owner's behind a line and you put a cookie 10 feet away and you see if the owner can go and pick up the cookie and if you can call them back with the oversized milk bone before they eat it. And I hired a stand-up comedian who was amazing at improv, making fun of the audience to make fun of the owners while they were trying to coax their dogs back. It was like, to me, the epitome of fun. It was really fun. We never took it. I was going to look at it as a secondary event to offer alongside Ultimutts because it was interactive and funny. So anyway, that was one of the events that I used to do. I miss it. But yeah, I might have to get him to come in and make fun of me if I fail. I never thought about marrying the two until this very second. Eureka.
I think that's genius. I've watched buskers who just their whole routine is just making fun of people walking past, and in a way that's done with a good sense of humor and doesn't actually offend anyone. Obviously, you can't always guarantee that, but I think that's genius. I love it.
Oh yeah. So Doggy House Calls, that was a lot of fun. That was a local cable show, and then it was syndicated to a couple other large cities in Canada, and it was really interesting. It was positive reinforcement dog training for the family pets. So we just interviewed people and just chose people and their family pets, and then I just went and worked with them. It was supposed to be, so the concept was of the station, the TV station, was to give multiple people an opportunity for a 6-week program so that they could have different programming all the time. And it ended up being on the air for 9 years. It just went off the air. And not Doggy House Calls specifically, but we did a spin-off with Doggy Diaries. And I thought it would just be neat to get to know the dogs as individuals. I always thought that would be really cool to have a series where the dog is the star, because we have a lot of Instagram where people really fall in love with dogs and follow them. So I didn't go that far, but with it, I would go where I had to meet my 2 deaf dogs and learn about them, how they're trained, watch them learn something. And then we met another dog that was deaf and blind and knew tricks. And we watched that dog do tricks. So that was the extension. So it started off with family pets and solutions. And then we started off with doggy house calls. And I think, one of my questions that I always, when I meet people, I'm always interested, whenever I meet people, I'm always interested to ask them, how does your career shape you? Because we are always doing things, our career shapes you. So as a dog trainer, my career shaped me to be calm when I meet people and never squeal or go, oh my God, because I'm always meeting people with dogs that are nervous. I'm always very calm. It shaped me to try to always talk and add a lesson. But I think with TV, it shaped me to learn to be concise. How has your career shaped you as a dog trainer? Give me a piece, or an animal trainer. What is that? Because if you're a hairstylist, you're probably good at conversation. Or if you're in podcasts, you're really good at keeping conversation and questions going. Or maybe you can tell me, what's your personality trait from your work?
To view myself as a learner and backtrack to what we talked about a little bit earlier, and do things in small approximations and celebrate successes and view your mistakes or failures, if that's what you choose to label things as, or others might label them as opportunities to learn. And that's exciting and scary, and can also lead to burnout. But I think that's what it shaped me to be as a person in 2022. I'm curious, if you met Will Smith, do you think you'd be calm and not squeal?
Yes, I think I would be calm, because on a movie set, you're not really even supposed to speak to them. So I think I'd be, because there's method acting where they go into character and you can't interrupt their being in character. Yeah, there's different kinds of acting. I would probably be really quiet and be like, no, you have to approach him and tell him the story. And I'm going to be like, no, I'm also shy, because my dogs have shaped me that people can shoot up to me and I never have to start conversations. So I'd be like, how would I approach and start this conversation with Will? But I would make sure that I would do it, because I think that it would be really reinforcing for him to hear a great motivational story about just being part of somebody's journey.
Hey, I know he likes animals. One of our old members trained birds in Australia, and they've got photos of Will Smith when he came to do some bird stuff with them. So there you go.
Cool. Well, maybe this is 6 degrees of separation. Okay, that person is going to call up Will and be like, hey, Will, I heard this podcast, and listen, so this person wants to meet you. Maybe it's because of you that the Will Smith, maybe this is one of the signs. Yeah. Just putting it out there.
Will Smith finds his peace with dogs and Melissa after recent trauma.
Yeah. Oh, no, yes.
Well, that's an interesting question. How has your career shaped your personality or your traits? What traits have you taken away? Because you described yourself to me as an octopus. What do you mean by that?
Well, my friend says that I'm always octopussing. Like, for example, that's taking on multiple tasks at once. And like you say, I think that was shaped because I have 8 dogs and 3 cats. And anybody with a young dog or multiple dogs and cats, or young children, if you ever have a conversation with them, you only get half of them. The other half is watching what the animals are doing to referee, or making sure that they're not scared, or having a special needs dog. And I think I developed a lot of skill octopussing from that. But don't, as animal trainers, we would develop that skill because we have multiple 2-tiered learning. I have 6 people in my classes. I have 6 human learners and 6 dog learners. And there's so much multitasking with that. So for me, I look at it in many ways. Octopussing would be, as a person, my job is I still do private lessons for reactivity or fear. And I also still do film, and I do live show, and training my own dogs. So I look at all of that as octopussing, but I always have my brain going in a million directions. I think when you look at me, you can just see that the wheels are turning. I'm with you, but wheels are still turning. So for example, when we were shooting Pet Sematary, I got a new motorhome. I renovated the inside of it as we were training the cats. I was still training my dogs and doing my show. And I guess I seem to thrive and still be able to handle multiple projects. But my business partner was like, "You're going to renovate your motorhome?" I'm like, "No, I'm just sharing ideas. Like, I'm not doing that part myself, but it still takes more headspace, right?" So I definitely octopus.
I look at that and I'm wondering how you do all of the things. What is a normal day as those words come out of my mouth? Do you have normal days?
Maybe not.
What does a normal day look like for you?
Do you know, when you do what I do, every day is different, which is really neat. You know, it's never the same. So there's a lot of inconsistency, but I keep consistent protocols throughout the chaos for my dogs anyway, so that they have some understanding. But they are used to things always flowing, and I think that's why they do so well on a set or walking into a food court one day or a halftime show the next. But a normal day in film would either look like we stay here in my training facility and we train all day. And the dogs are engaged in the training where I have a waiting room for the dogs to hang out. And then they get to be part of the training sessions with stays, you know, so I'll do all the stays at the same time and everybody gets treated and they get to engage that way. And then while I'm training the movie dogs, I'm shuffling dogs and moving them. So I'm training the movie dogs. I'm putting a play group of dogs outside and I've got a play group of dogs in the office. And then we train the next movie dog. Then the movie dogs go in the waiting room and my dogs come out and they run around and they play. And so I'm shuffling dogs all day and training the movie dogs all day. Then what it probably looks like is I put the movie dogs, they actually get transported here and transported home. When they go, then I give my dogs a training session and then go in and do family time. When it's a filming day, then I actually, and you know what's really interesting is, and that could be a whole other pod, how crazy I am with my dogs and the way that I treat them. Like, for example, I have hired on every major TV series and things that I've done a personal dog nanny for my dogs to come and live in my motorhome and walk them all day while I'm shooting, so that at the end of the shot or in between shots, I can come back and spend time with them and train them and know that they're getting what they need and they're not at the house without me. Or it's a full-time job, right? When you have 8 dogs, it's a full-time job. So when I work without them, they get their own full-time nanny. And that would be another example of a day. Another example of a day would be we travel and do shows. And that's where we find a place to hike along the way. Usually that's on the way back. A show day would be we set up, that takes an hour and a half, acclimate the dogs, do a half-hour show, eat ice cream, check out the ride, see the magician show, and then repeat. And each day it's a different fare. You know, stand there, everybody tells me how cute the dogs are. That's another day. A whole different day is I have private lessons all day, or I do Hollywood classes, or go to the park for the full day. Like, I'm definitely into shenanigans and adventures. And so if you were to hang out with me, I'd be like, okay, here's today's crazy idea, or here's today's adventure. And it's always different, which I love.
And so you're training some dogs up at the moment. I don't know how much you can say, or maybe not allowed to say stuff. You're training some dogs up. You just say you can't talk about it if you can't for a show at the moment. Yeah,
that's a good point. You can almost never talk about it, but this is a TV series that's ongoing, season 4. So I can say we're training the dogs in Titans, which is a Warner Brothers TV series aired on Netflix right now. And the dogs are Crypto, the super dog. So it's Super Boy's dogs. They can fly. They have superhuman intelligence. They have laser eyes. It's really cool. So we originally, when we got cast, I found 3 dogs that look the same. And it looks like lab shepherdy type dogs with tipped ears. And we take animal paint and we paint them white. You know what they do at shows to make the dogs whiter? We chalk them and we use livestock paint. We condition them to feel good about that. And then we did 2 seasons with them. And for season 3, I went out and I got a crypto dog of my own to train, because the dogs that I was using for the series were other people's actual pet dogs. They weren't trained dogs. I would take them 9 to 5 and train them. And then they would go home at the end of the day. So, I mean, everything that we do in film is really dog-centered. There's some organizations, and I don't mean to look at this like a criticism, but there are things that as parents, or as dog owners, we have beliefs about what lives that dogs should have. And sometimes some other organizations, they have like kennels of dogs. And I feel that dogs should still be pets. So I don't have any kennels on my facility. My dogs, I try to engage them with me as much as possible. Like people see my training barn and they think, oh, there's probably a bunch of kennels in there. And I'm like, no, like we got couches and it's a heated play area. They sleep in my bed. So when it comes to for me to use pets or for me to do a series, maybe other organizations would go out and adopt 3 dogs and then they would sort of live in kennels and come out to work. So since I don't do that and I say 8 dogs is the maximum amount of dogs that I can have as pets to give them what they need and as still have a dog nanny be able to reasonably handle that without being some kind of expert, I'm going to borrow people's pets from 9 to 5 to work the show. So that's how we do it. And they like it because their dogs get trained and they get paychecks. And the dogs love it. They get really excited when they come out. They enjoy the mental stimulation. They sleep when they get home. But yeah, no, my new dog, Pepsi, I adopted him out of Missouri. This is really interesting because I had to search across North America to find this look. My mother found this dog in Missouri. I had a friend assess him and drive him up because we wouldn't fly dogs. Like I'm such a baby for their emotional state, but we had to drive him up and I adopted him. When he arrived, he was young. So he was smaller than the other dogs. He was heartworm positive and his ears stood up at the last second. I was like, oh my God, you're 9 months old. How do your ears suddenly stand up? So I took masking tape and I just taped it. It didn't hurt, taped the tip of his ears and they stayed. But COVID happened and it shut down production for a year and I had all this time to train him. And he is like incredible. He's developed all this muscle. He looks like he just grew into exactly what you would imagine for crypto. It's an amazing underdog to wonder dog story. And he is just the most wonderful little sweetie Petey. He's a good actor. He's such a little timid sweetheart. I built up his confidence, but I specifically trained him to lift his head to look confident because that's not his natural temperament. And I forget what I said earlier about concise. I really went on there.
Yeah, we don't like
just
concise.
Remember I said my personality was shaped to be concise? Forget it all.
You're concisely unconcise. I don't know that thing. I saw Pepsi on your website and you've got your little area of your site where people can go and meet all of the actors. You got Snickers and these are all names Snickers that appeal to kids at shows. I'm making an assumption we did the same in zoos.
Did you?
Yeah.
What names did you have?
Well, when I first got started, before I worked in free flight bird shows, we lived with a wombat in Australia called Wiggles. Wiggles lived in our house with us. It was an educational animal.
You lived in your house? Wiggles did?
I didn't live at my own house. I lived at someone else's house full time on this property where we did a lot of wildlife stuff, and we had a wombat living with us. And until Wiggles got too large to safely and reasonably live in that space. But Wiggles would jump in the back of the car and sleep for 3 or 4 hours, and then we'd get her out, and she would walk around and do education with people at fairs. I don't know anything about training then, so we didn't do anything other than we didn't have to do anything. Wiggles was just a really great personality and did well in those contexts and was raised in those contexts. But we have a wonderful member of ours gave me a voucher to spend at the zoo I was consulting at, and so I had this voucher to spend at the gift shop, and we brought this giant wombat for our daughter. So we have Wiggles the wombat still living at our house with us now, although in stuffed form.
I am so jealous of you. That must have been so awesome.
I have to find a photo of Wiggles. Yeah, wombats are now one of my favorite species for sure. They are amazing, and this animal was so clever and had such a strong personality. And me and her went on huge adventures. Literally, when she got to a certain age, she just wanted to wander. And so we let her wander. Oh my gosh. And I just used to follow her at night time. And we used to go on big walks until we couldn't go anymore, and we had to pick her up, and she just rested in our arms on her back. Yeah. Well, so we had that's the first example that comes to my mind. But you've got what are the other names of your critters?
I have all food, pickles, lollipop, sashimi. I have Kit Kat, Snickers, Twizzler, Pepsi, and a tonic. Some of them have grown-up names, like sashimi is too fancy to be called anything else. Tonic because he was the good cat in Pet Sematary, and the evil cat was originally, she didn't end up staying around, but her name was Jin. So the director's name were him Tonic, and I thought that was cool. He was named by the directors. And then I have Jelly Bean, which is interesting because I got him as a puppy, and he's an Australian cattle dog, and he looks evil. Like when he's smiling and he's visiting, he's friendly, but he just looks evil. And he's a serious dog. You ever see those dogs? They work and they're thinking and their tail hangs and they're just very serious workers.
I've seen
Snickers.
I've seen his photo on your website. And he does have he looks like he's thinking in the photo. He looks like he's looking at you through the computer screen, like trying to figure you out.
Yes. Like kids pet him, and then he'll look at the kids and they'll just pull their hands in. And I'm like, no, that's just the way he looks. Like it's this look. So he's been in 2 horror films as an actor. And anyway, so it's just funny. His name ended up being Jelly Bean because it's not the right name for him at all. And I didn't know because he just grew up, right? But that brings about another point. I had this Hollywood Stars show, and all of this TV and movies I end up doing are all horror thriller genre. So I'm like, kids, maybe you'll recognize this cat from Pet Sematary, or, what other things have you guys worked on? We worked on Chucky, the TV series, and Titans is like a dark action series. So yeah, just ended up that way that we keep doing horror. And so this is Jelly Bean from Fractured. It's just funny.
What we might do, looking at the time, is what we and you as the audience are getting used to now with this podcast show is turn this into a double episode, because we're going to talk about Melissa's experience working in films, and you've already heard her say how important the emotional state of her animals is, and she's given lots of examples as to how she cares for that. But we're gonna dive deeper into that. Before we finish up part 1, Melissa, though, can you just let everyone know where they can go online to find out more about you, your businesses, hire you for their next film, follow you on social media?
Yeah, so you could check us out on ultimutts.ca, ultimutts.ca, or Instagram is a really fun spot to see all sorts of tricks. It's _Ultimutts. And then, of course, the animal training for film would be Ontario Animal Actors. And if you were curious about our dog training school, that one is called In Dogs We Trust. So you can see the theme. I like the play on words.
Love it. And for those listening, we'll link to all of this in the show notes as well. Melissa, for part 1, this has been so much fun from myself, and on behalf of everyone listening, we really appreciate your time so far. Thank you so much. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We do, of course, really appreciate all of you tuning in today as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and you were interested in carrying on the conversation about working with our animals in the most positive, funnest, choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.animaltrainingacademy.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behaviour geeks. That's it for this episode though. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again so much everyone for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.